Moscow has the most expensive defenses in the world, but in the early hours of May 17th, those defenses were useless. More than 1,000 Ukrainian drones passed over the Russian capital for nearly 24 straight hours. Refineries in flames, missile factories destroyed, airports paralyzed. And this wasn't luck, it wasn't brute force. It was an operation put together piece by piece, and when you understand how it worked, you'll realize that this war has reached a new level. But before explaining what happened that night, you need to understand one thing, because without understanding this, the attack seems impossible. Honestly, in a way it was. You see, Russia spent years building an invisible wall around Moscow. Layers upon layers of radars, interceptor missiles, and equipment that monitor and block any threat coming from the sky, positioned in a ring around the capital. No other city in the world has similar protection. Putin invested billions to ensure that no drone, no missile, no aerial threat would get close to the Kremlin. The Russian government's palace, the heart of Putin's power. And he believed it, he truly believed that Moscow was untouchable, that the shield was perfect, that the war could destroy Ukraine, but would never reach his doorstep. Putin invaded Ukraine expecting it to be like a quick parade. But 4 years later, we're seeing something very different. Now it's Moscow that wakes up to the sound of explosions. Stop and think. Billions have been invested in the most expensive shield on the planet. It was developed to shoot down drones that cost less than an economy car. You're already imagining how this ends, right? The truth is that this belief was Putin's biggest strategic mistake in 4 years of war. It's not the first time in history absolute power has fallen due to the belief in its invincibility. While he was building the shield, Ukraine was studying every crack in it. Think about it. If you wanted to break through the densest air defense in the world, where would you start? Ukraine's answer surprised everyone. Hours before the first drones took off, something was happening on the streets of Moscow. Agents from the Atesh Group, a pro-Ukraine resistance network operating inside Russian territory itself, were moving silently through the districts of Putilkovo, Komunarka, and Domodedovo. It was a cold, early morning. The streets were empty, no uniforms, no visible weapons, just tools. And the certainty that what they would do that night would open the skies of Moscow to hundreds of drones. Their target wasn't soldiers, it was communication towers. Towers that looked ordinary on the outside, but inside housed the electronic modules responsible for detecting low-flying objects, like drones, and transmit this data in real time to Moscow's air defense systems. When those towers fell, part of Moscow's air defenses went blind. Invisible corridors opened up, and it was exactly through those corridors that the drones came in. Putin built the most expensive shield in the world. But there were people inside his own city willing to shut it down from the inside. Then the drones arrived. And what happened in the following hours will surprise you. It was 2 in the morning when the first explosions were heard in the Moscow region. It wasn't dozens of drones. It was hundreds. They kept coming for almost 24 hours straight. Russia tried to respond, activated everything it had. In the end, the Russian Ministry of Defense claimed to have shot down more than 1,000 drones in a single day. The highest number recorded since the beginning of the war, but even so, the targets burned. But do you know what was really on fire in Moscow that night? The answer to that question is also the answer to another, much bigger one. Can Russia still sustain this war? One thing became very clear after the attacks. Unlike Russia, Ukraine didn't go there to terrorize civilians. It was to dismantle, piece by piece, the factory that fuels Russia's war machine. The first target was the Elma-Zelenograd industrial complex. A little over 30 kilometers from downtown Moscow. Imagine an entire neighborhood dedicated to manufacturing the brains of Russian weapons. More than 150 companies within a single complex, producing sensors, optical systems, precision instruments. the parts that end up inside the missiles that fall on Ukrainian cities. That dawn, orange flames lit up the dark sky of Zelensky, and a column of black smoke rose above the buildings. The complex burned. Soon after, the Engström company was hit. It manufactures microprocessors and semiconductors, the components without which a Russian precision missile does not work. For the Ukrainian security service, destroying Engström means destroying the production line of the missiles that kill Ukrainian civilians. Without chips, there are no missiles. Without missiles, Russia's attack capability starts to shrink. Think about the chain reaction. Without chips, the missile factory shuts down. Planes won't attack without missiles. Without airstrikes, the pressure on Ukraine drops. Destroying a microchip factory in Moscow directly affects what falls on Ukrainian cities weeks later. But Ukraine was not finished yet. In Dubna, the Raduga Missile Development Center was reported as the target of the operation. This is the place where Russian engineers design cruise missiles, the same ones that were launched against residential buildings in Ukraine just days before. If this is confirmed, Ukraine would not have attacked just the missiles. It would have attacked the mines that create them. And then came the oil. The Moscow refinery, one of the 10 largest in the country and responsible for 40% of all the fuel in the capital region, was hit. Residents filmed from outside. Flames rising above the walls, thick black smoke. Spreading across the horizon, Moscow's sky painted orange and gray in the middle of the night. The Solnechnogorsk fuel loading station, which supplies both the front lines and the export terminals, was also destroyed. The fire in Moscow wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. For 4 years, it was the Ukrainians who woke up to that noise. Now, for the first time, Muscovites understood what it means to look up at the sky in fear. And the chaos wasn't limited to the refineries. Vnukovo and Sheremetyevo airports, 2 of the largest in Russia, were closed during the attack. Almost 300 flights were canceled or delayed. Drone fragments fell near Sheremetyevo. For a few hours, Moscow was at a standstill. Isolated, paralyzed, looking up at its own sky in flames. And here is the number that the Russian government fears more than any drone. In the first 2 months of 2026, Russia's oil and gas revenue fell by 47%. Ukrainian attacks have reduced by 40% the amount of oil that Russia is able to sell to the world. Refining capacity has plummeted to its lowest level since 2009. Officials from the Russian government itself had already warned Putin in private about the risk of a financial crisis later this year. The money that pays the soldiers, the missiles, and the war is drying up, and every refinery that Ukraine destroys is another month that Putin can't finance. But there's a moment that night that sums it all up and that the Russian media tried to hide. In the middle of the chaos, Moscow residents filmed an explosion hitting a residential building. You can see a hole in the facade, shattered windows, families in a panic. The Russian government's narrative was immediate. Ukrainian drone, terrorist attack, proof that Ukraine kills civilians. But the images proved otherwise. In the videos, you can clearly see the moment when a missile from the Russian air defense system itself, fired to try to shoot down the Ukrainian drones, veers off target and hits the building. Yes, Russia bombed itself. The protector became a threat, the shield turned into a knife. The system built to protect its citizens was the one that attacked them. The Kremlin may even lie about what happened, but the video is there for everyone to see. This is the state of Russian air defense today. So overloaded, so disoriented that it starts to become a danger to the very people it should be protecting. And Ukraine knew this because this attack wasn't planned overnight. Since 2022, Ukraine has been executing a strategy that few noticed while it was happening. An air defense system destroyed here, a radar taken out there, a communication tower in Novgorod, an electronic module in Sverdlovsk. Each small strike isolated, almost invisible in the headlines. But each strike opened a bigger hole in the Russian shield. When it was time to attack Moscow, Ukraine was not improvising. It was using the map it had spent 3 years drawing. A military analyst quoted by the Kyiv Independent summed up very well what is happening, saying, "Ukraine has gained the ability to inflict a kind of pain that Russia was not prepared to feel. And that capability is not going to disappear." While Moscow was burning, Ukraine simultaneously attacked the Belbek air base in occupied Crimea, a destroyed air defense system, a hangar with radars destroyed, an air traffic control tower also destroyed. The logic was cruel and precise. While Russia was looking at the sky over Moscow, Ukraine was wiping out more defenses somewhere else at the same time. Putin now faces an impossible choice. He needs to decide whether to reinforce Moscow and weaken Crimea, or protect Crimea and leave the capital exposed. It's like a short blanket. You pull it on one side and the other side is left uncovered. Whatever path he chooses, he loses something. Now Putin faces something even worse than the attack itself. Uncertainty. He doesn't know when the next one will come. He doesn't know what the target will be. He doesn't know if the saboteurs are already positioning themselves in another city. This uncertainty has a psychological and strategic cost that doesn't show up in any report. But it consumes resources, paralyzes decisions, and corrodes the command from within. Right after, Zelensky made a statement, and he was very direct. He called the attack completely justified. He said that the drones flew more than 500 kilometers, crossing the largest concentration of air defenses in Russia. And he ended with a simple sentence. "We are clearly telling the Russians, your country must end this war." We started this video by saying that Moscow was untouchable. Now you know it never was. These attacks were not mere revenge. They were a demonstration. And for Ukrainians who have been living under bombardment for more than 4 years, this has a name. It's called balance. Ukraine has shown that there is no longer any safe place inside Russia. There is no protected refinery. There is no missile factory far enough away. There is no untouchable capital. It achieved all this using drones cheaper than an economy car, produced in factories that 4 years ago didn't even exist. This is war now. It's no longer just about trenches in eastern Ukraine. It's about who can endure the most. And for the first time since the beginning of the conflict, the winds are shifting. A few years from now, when this war is studied, the early morning of May 17th will appear as the moment when it became clear that no country, no matter how powerful, is safe from the consequences of starting a war it cannot win. Now, I want to know your opinion. Do you believe that Putin still has any strategic way out in this war, or has he already lost control of the situation? Leave your answer in the comments. If this video showed you something that the news doesn't show, share it with someone who needs to see this. See you next time.